Hi, everyone. Today I want to spend a few minutes talking about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief that we've all heard so much about: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And in many ways, I feel history's been hard on Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was an incredible advocate and pioneer in her time. And I do realize there's all kinds of controversy around the stages and whose stages they were and everything as well. But for today's purposes, I really want to focus on why, as a grief therapist, I usually encourage my clients to just throw the idea of these 5 neat, tidy stages right out the window. I think part of the reason these 5 stages have resonated so much with people is that our brains seek neat, tidy answers, even when it's hard stuff that we're grappling with. And the reality is, for grief, it's usually a pretty messy process. And that's where I find, not only just in adults, I've often had young kids, 10, 11 years old, talking about these 5 stages of grief that they're anticipating experiencing after the death of a friend or a parent or another family member. And that's where, I find quite often it leads people to feel as though they're failing in their grief process. They're not doing it right because they're not landing in this elusive place of acceptance. And quite often, in replacement of the 5 stages, I find myself just drawing a squiggly mess on a paper and talking about how, in reality, grief is often messy. There's these things that I call grief bursts. I'm probably borrowing that terminology from somewhere, but essentially, you could be going along and having a good day, and all of a sudden, boom, out of the blue, your grief feels as big as it did when the death or the loss first happened, even if years and years have passed. And I'm often reassuring people they are not grieving wrong. This is a natural and healthy way for us to do grief as human beings. And sometimes it goes the other way, where I've had people that I'm working with and they're like, I was in such a dark place a couple hours ago, I didn't even think I could get here to this session. And yet, for whatever reason, something's lifted. I feel lighter. There's a release, maybe some grace even. And so it's unpredictable and it can be messy. And sometimes there's unexpected lightness, and sometimes there's heaviness and those grief bursts that catch us completely unaware, even years down the road. But I think that the important thing around the 5 stages is for people to understand that it's not a neat, tidy, predictable, linear set of stages. Kubler-Ross herself, later in her life, really made it clear too that she didn't mean for it to be prescriptive or linear, that you can go back and forth. And many people I work with do experience aspects of bargaining, denial, all of the things that Kubler-Ross quoted. But in essence, grief can be messy, it can be unpredictable, but it's also something I've really come to know after 20 years of doing this work that can be integrated into people's lives in a way that they are able to engage in living again in a way that they might not have thought they could do in the early days of their grief. I hope there's been some useful tidbits here.